plans to start shooting the series. It will air sometime next year. 11:05 on Atlanta News First. The end could be in sight for Georgia's longest-running criminal trial. In the YSL case. A $50 million rec center for the LGBTQ community could be coming to Atlanta. No city to pay for it.
To empty the propellant out of those lines ahead of launch. Yeah, should be significant venting again as we cross that, and get ready for showtime here.
Do want to go to this video here, SpaceX showing cryo test for Starship Flight 7, which features the first Block 2 version of the ship upper stage. Zach, if you want to jump in with these visuals of some of the key differences here on the ship.
Yeah, so one of the big differences, you can see there's a lot more propellant on version 2 of the ship, so that frost line is going up a lot higher than what we've seen in the past. Also, the position of the Pez dispenser loader has changed as well too, so that is, I believe, a little bit higher up as well, and that makes the actual payload section a little bit smaller as well too. The Ring Watchers have a really great article that explains all of this stuff. They've been working pretty hard on updating renders for the version 2 of the ship, but yeah, tons of great changes on that, and it's going to be really exciting to see that for the first time on Flight 7.
And the different angles of the forward flaps obviously going to be a big difference as well. We saw those briefly. If you want to, can you just expound on the reasoning for that element of the change and the better protection that could provide for those flaps during peak heating as reentry gets underway?
Yeah, definitely. So those flaps are a little bit more out of the way, so they're with their positioning should allow them to hopefully survive better during reentry. I think that's some of the issues that they've been having right now are ones that they're not able to necessarily do anything about. So that is one thing that will make this flight a little bit more interesting, given that we know that they're probably still going to have issues with the forward flaps. What's going to happen when they attempt to do a more aggressive reentry? I think this is, again, probably gathering data for giving them something to compare with once they start with version 2 of the ship. So yeah, that is going to be one of the more exciting features as well. If they end up getting similar results, that's going to be very difficult to address, because they're going to have to make some major changes if that doesn't solve the issue that they've been having.
Just listening here to some of the notes from the SpaceX commentators about the potential for holds or scrubs and how that'll work. Just to reiterate for the audience, if they reach the T-minus 40-second point, they can hold for about 20 minutes. Once the flame deflector is activated about T-minus 10 seconds, though, if for some reason there's an issue that causes them to stop the countdown process, that would be an automatic scrub. Commentators saying that things are still looking go for launch at this point in time. Of course, we'll continue to monitor that as we proceed. Now less than 4 minutes to go before the planned liftoff. You may have seen in the SpaceX graphic at the upper right-hand corner of the screen that the weather, the range, and the health of the vehicle all showing green in support of a liftoff here in the next few minutes. Want to listen to SpaceX's Dan Hewitt for just a quick update here.
So we should be done with our prop load on ship momentarily. Then about 30 seconds later, we'll close out on booster. Our flight control team on board, or in the building just behind me, not on board. Some of them might wish they were on board. Flight control team in the building behind me, they're going to have a lot of work to do right after we lift off, as we still have a lot of manual checks that happen on the tower prior to the flight director, who's going to be Tristan Pierce again today, giving a manual command to bring the booster back to the launch site. And the tower did just incredibly well on the last flight. We didn't lose any of our required redundancy for a catch. So we're hoping to see that again today. A lot of the team, really putting armor on the tower, making all of those things work, played a huge role in making that catch possible, and looking forward to hopefully seeing that happen again. And of course, sending our first payload to space. You can see the banana. It's very tightly secured, but I assure you it does have some room to float around. So once we're in a zero gravity environment, we should see our first Starship zero gravity indicator putting on a little bit of a show. And that's looking right in. That's where we're going to have Starlinks. That's our PEZ deployer. So getting its ride to space. So coming up on about 2.5 minutes, we are closing out on all of our prop load. Just heard that our fill drains are starting to close, so that means we're no longer going to be flowing propellant into the booster and the ship. We're going to do what's called pushbacks. So all of that propellant in the ground systems is going to get pushed back to the tanks, clear out everything around the pad right before we light those 33 engines and take off. Just quick reminder, you're going to see fire start at the bottom. You're going to see the deflector start at about 10 seconds before launch. Lots of water to help dissipate all that heat, all that sound. And then the engine starting up in 3 different groups. And then about a second after T0, we should see liftoff. About 2.5 minutes into the flight, a little bit longer, we'll see hot staging. And that's when we're going to be listening really close on those loops to see if we're going to be bringing the booster back for a catch today. Do always want to caution, it's never a guarantee. We've done this once. We'll see if we do it again. We're only going to do it if the booster and the tower are looking really good before we attempt to bring it back here. But coming up on a minute, not tracking any holds on the board right now. So as long as we don't have any last second things, which do happen. All right, flight director just confirmed T-minus 1 minute.
And again, SpaceX is coming in on a slight delay, which is why you heard that 1 minute. Currently T-minus 30 seconds in real time. $20 seconds. Not holding at the T-minus 40 minute mark per SpaceX feed. 15 seconds. We're go for launch in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Flame deflector activated. 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and movement. We have liftoff of Starship Flight 6. And the rocket has cleared the tower. And a great ascent of the rocket so far, now coming up on a minute into flight. Starship approaching max Q, the point of peak aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Some great tracking shots by the teams at La Padre and Spaceflight now. Call for max Q. We're coming upon a few different events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see for the Super Heavy booster MECO, which in this case is most engines cut off, then the hot staging for the stage separation, then the Super Heavy boost back burn will start at about T plus 2 minutes and 44 seconds. Good flights so far, all 33 Raptors on the booster. Continuing a good burn so far. Less than 30 seconds to MECO. SpaceX monitoring to see if they are going to go forward with the catch today. Approaching MECO. And you see MECO there. Hot staging. SpaceX confirms that the tower is go for catch. Ignition on the ship upper stage. And some good on camera or on ship views. Or this is the Super Heavy booster, one of those hypersonic grid fins there. Now nearly 4 minutes into flight. Boost back burn shutdown has occurred. Booster has been sounds like there may be an offshore diversion, which means we are, sounds like not going to see SpaceX go for the Super Heavy booster catch. So the Super Heavy booster will be landing in the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. They are not going to be attempting a tower catch today. As SpaceX said in the run-up to this mission, this was always a possibility that if all of the commit criteria were not in alignment on both the Super Heavy booster as well as the tower, that they would not go for a catch, and that is what we have here today. We're continuing to track the Super Heavy booster as it makes its descent. That little white dot at the base of the box on the right-hand side of your screen, that is the hot stage ring that was jettisoned. Now T plus 5 minutes, 41 seconds into the count. The landing burn should be starting in less than a minute on the Super Heavy booster. SpaceX will, of course, continue to get good flight data from the Super Heavy booster, even though it is not in a position for them to make a catch attempt today. This tracking view from the perspective of South Padre Island, and this from due west of the launch pad. So we're coming up on the landing burn start. Now landing burn underway. And a splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico of the Super Heavy booster B-13. And the booster has exploded on the water. So for those joining once again, SpaceX waved off a catch attempt of the Super Heavy booster, instead opting to have a water splashdown instead. So you can see the ship upper stage still continuing on with its flight, though. Now T plus 7 minutes 41 seconds in real time, 7:29 on the SpaceX feed. The next milestone that we're tracking here is actually an important test that's coming up in just about 30 minutes. Will be the ignition of a Raptor engine. Getting a nice view from multiple perspectives on the ship here. Want to bring in our commentating panel here as we're continuing to watch the ship upper stage. Stephen, I'll start with you. We always knew that waving off of the Super Heavy booster catch was certainly a possibility, but your thoughts on the decision to not go for the catch at this juncture on Flight 6?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what SpaceX, the flight control team, saw in the data that made them decide not to attempt the catch. Everything looked pretty normal to me with the Super Heavy booster on descent. Certainly looked like it reached the ocean intact and at a relatively low rate of speed, low descent rate. So, unless it was, significantly off course or is a problem with guidance or something, who knows? We'll see. I'm sure we'll find out from Elon or from SpaceX, even perhaps during their broadcast, what caused that issue, and to see them not go for the catch, a little disappointing. Again, not entirely surprising. This is only the second time they've tried it, but it looks like maybe they learned something from the descent that they can adjust or tweak on the next vehicle to make chances of a catch even greater.
Well, and, as we heard from some audio that Elon Musk likely inadvertently published to X, formerly Twitter, with a debrief from Flight 5, it sounded like they got pretty close to having to abort the catch from Flight 5, and that it was, I'll paraphrase and not use the profanity that was used by one of the SpaceX employees, but some pretty scary stuff as it came right down to the wire there. So potentially they were seeing something similar with this, but to your point, Stephen, we'll have to wait to hear from SpaceX and get some more information from the data once they've got a full wrap on this mission.
Yeah, of course, that issue they saw on some great views. I think that's Florida and the Bahamas that we're seeing right now on the view from Starship. Pretty remarkable to see that from space. So anyway, I think the issue that they almost got bitten by on Flight 5 was closer down to the launch tower, and they were close to having to divert the booster off to the south of the launch tower, out to the remote dunes just south of the launch site to avoid hitting the tower. whatever they saw in the data this time was much higher up, either during or shortly after the boost back burn.
And just one other point of note, calling back a previous part of our conversation in the run-up to launch, do have word that the crew aboard the International Space Station reportedly did see the launch from orbit. So keep your eyes peeled for some social media updates in the hours to come, particularly from
There is a
NASA.
storm coming, an event like the world has never seen before. The emerging event will have little to do with weather, but more about developing situations that were foreseen many years ago. We have always warned you during severe weather and news events that affected many. Now, Channel 1 Atlanta begins a new series to warn you about what's coming soon and make sure you are prepared. Join us on a new journey, as according to a recent survey, a lot of people believe we are living in the last days. Current news events show us now more than ever. In history, time is setting the stage for the coming storm, a new series, now playing only on Channel 1 Atlanta.
Problems and limitations with very low level DNA. We can't make matches, and that's based on our validation. If there is dropout at one of these 21 locations, it could skew the match statistic. That's another issue. We can only look at mixtures between 2 and 5 individuals. Once you get up to 5 individuals, the software could do what's called stalling, where it has a hard time determining the genotypes. That's something we've encountered.
Okay, so and I'm new to all this, but I think that you went through all the ones that I could find. Through my research. And so one of those problems is a determining how many contributors there are. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And any time that you have one of these mixtures of DNA, the scientist has to determine how many contributors there are. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And what they do is they say, okay, we think that there's 2 or 3 contributors to this particular mixture of DNA.
Yes.
Okay. And you plug in that number of contributors, and then the software runs does its thing.
Yes.
Okay. Depending on how many contributors you decide are in there, will change the probabilities, these likelihood ratios that you testified to before, right?
It will change them, yes. If I say there's 3 individuals, but there's actually 2, then it will spread out those probabilities to those other individuals, and there would be a match, but it would have a lower match likelihood ratio.
Okay. And when you're making those determinations as to how many contributors there are, the opinion on how many contributors there are could differ. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Amongst people who know this stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay. Other experts, for instance.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing you talked about is the quantity of the DNA. Are there limits that you can't go below when you're using true allele?
There's limits we can't go below when we use the traditional testing, so that then applies to true allele as well.
Okay, so are they the same limits between traditional DNA testing and true allele?
Well, since you start with the traditional, that's the limiting factor.
Okay. Who is that limit set by? Is that GBI?
That's GBI, but it's based on our validation of the global Fowler kit that we used for traditional DNA testing.
Okay. What about cybergenetics validation studies? Do they have a limit that you're not allowed to go under?
I'm not aware of that. It would depend on what the amplification was, but not to my knowledge.
Okay. What about separating out these mixtures if it involves close family relations? Are there any limitations on true allele about that?
If it's a lower match, you can have false inclusions with family members, but with the match statistics in this case, and also that we had the reference samples of the two brothers, I don't believe that had any effect on the results.
Okay. And if we kind of control for these limitations, then true allele should be perfect, right? It's just running numbers. Is that fair to say?
Well, it is a random process. So then we do run the software 3 requests each, and we must have 2 requests that are concordant. However, we do have instances where those requests, we don't have concordant requests, and we cannot make any conclusions about a mixture.
I don't understand. What does that mean? It can't, like, it's not concordant. I don't understand what that means. Could you explain that?
Concordant mixture weights and concordant genotypes for contributors we must have before we can make any conclusions. They must be concordant in 2 different true allele requests. So if this doesn't occur, we can't make any conclusions.
Okay. And so, if done correctly then, and I think this is maybe what I'm understanding, that true allele is, you testified that it's reproducible. Is that what you were just saying?
Yes.
Okay. But every time you run it, it's going to have a different number, right? I mean, it's going to give you a different likelihood. These huge numbers that you're using, every time you run it, the numbers are going to be different, right?
They're going to be slightly different because how true allele determines those contributors is a random process.
It's a random process.
Yes, but the results, again, they must be within a certain number of log units or a certain amount difference. There can't be a big difference between the 2 requests for us to report the results.
If you run one of these tests, one run of this test, 5 minutes later you run a different run of this test, are the numbers going to be the same?
Not exactly.
Okay. So it's not exactly reproducible.
It's reproducible within an approximation.
Okay. Who sets that approximation?
That's based on the validation. We do have an amount that they have to be close to each other in order to report the results.
Okay. So in this case, we're comparing the DNA against kind of 3 different individuals. We've got Jose, we've got Argenis, and we've got Diego. Is that right?
Yes, in Lake and Raleigh.
Okay. And I just want to take the right fingernail clipping and just kind of go through the process here. You've got the YSTR, and that's the first test that you do, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that eliminates Diego as a possibility.
Correct.
Okay. And when we go to a true allele test, it says that this is 200 trillion times less probable that it's Argenis. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. But that it's only 1 billion times less probable that it's Diego's.
Correct.
Okay, so that means that according to True Allele, it is more likely to be Arrhenis than it is to be Diego, correct?
Arrhenis is, exclusion number is more than Diego, yes.
So it is, so according to True Allele, this is more likely to be Arrhenis than it is to be Diego.
Yes, but that's more based on the difference in their DNA profiles.
Okay, but you already excluded them with the YSTR, is that right?
I excluded Diego.
Okay, so you excluded Diego, but he's more likely to be the contributor according to True Allele.
That's using his DNA reference sample, and it would be based on his profile. It would also be based on how much genetic information he shares with his brother. And so that's not an unexpected result.
Okay, why do the odds change depending on which test it is in terms of, why isn't it always 200 trillion times more likely or less likely to be Arrhenis and 1 billion times less likely to be Diego?
Because you're comparing to their specific reference samples for them, and it's based on how often their genetic information is found in the random population. So if someone has genetic information that is found more in the population or less in the population, it can change that number. So it's all based on that they have different DNA profiles, so there's different match results.
Okay, the genetic profiles in this case didn't change though, did they?
The mixture was the same, yes.
Okay, and their reference samples didn't change, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you say it's run against the population. Within the course of this case, the population didn't change that much, did it?
No, it's actually the same database.
Okay, so why is it that the odds change? If for the fingernail, for instance, it's 200 trillion times less probable to be Arrhenis,
Mm-hmm.
and it is 1 billion times less probable to be Diego, why isn't it always 200 trillion and 1 billion?
Because it's based on the comparison of their reference sample to the data.
But we just said that the reference samples haven't changed, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so the population numbers haven't changed, correct?
Correct.
So why does the likelihood change?
Between the two individuals?
Yes, it's always the same DNA that you're plugging into the machine, right?
Yes, but I mean, if they were identical siblings, they would have identical likelihood ratios. But since they're not identical siblings, the numbers are different.
Sure, but the siblings in this case didn't change between two tests, did they?
They're different tests with different type of results. The YSTR test
Sure.
has different type of results and a different statistical database than the True Allele.
Did you say the YSTR has different database than the True Allele?
Yes, the Global Fowler and the True Allele have the same database, and the YSTR is a different database.
Right. The 200 trillion and the 1 billion are the straw numbers, correct?
Yes.
Or I'm sorry, the fingernail numbers, correct?
10 billion for Jose Ibarra, 200 trillion, and 1 billion for the brothers.
Okay. And then when we get to the straw, it changes to 10 sextillion and 10 quadrillion, right?
Yes.
Okay. Same reference DNA that you're putting into True Allele, right?
Yes.
Okay. Same population database that you're using for True Allele, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the same 3 brothers that you're testing against, right?
Correct.
Okay. Why has the number changed from 200 trillion to 10 sextillion as it relates to Arrhenis if it's the same DNA that's being put in?
Because it's a different mixture than the fingernails.
Okay. True Allele doesn't identify DNA, does it?
It gives a match statistic in the form of a likelihood ratio.
But it doesn't identify DNA, does it?
I don't understand your.
Okay, well, let's take an example, and it relates to number 6, the testing on number 6. Okay? the report that you gave and you testified to on direct said that due to limited data, no conclusive determination can be made as the minor evidence genotype. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. But at least on one attempt at running True-Allele on this, you did get a result, didn't you? On number 6.
May have had one of the 3 requests fall above 6%, 4%, but they had to be concordant for me to make a match.
Sure, but you got a result, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. And that match score was above a 4, right?
I would have to look at the notes.
Okay.
Yeah. Totally different question than what I thought you were asking.
Well, okay. You got a match score above 4.
I got a match when compared to our staff database.
Hold on, who?
We have a staff database that we use of
Okay.
people who are involved in the DNA section and spread out through GBI, investigators, admin. So we compare the True-Allele results to the staff database.
Okay. So my question was, you got a result in this when you were running item number 6, correct?
Yes.
Okay. True-Allele didn't say, we don't know whose DNA this is. I can't give you a result. Is that right? It didn't shut down.
No.
Okay. It gave you a result, and it told you that it had matched who?
It was a random match to a former GBI agent who did not work in the Athens area.
Okay. So that GBI agent didn't work in the lab, did they?
No.
Okay. And you don't have any reason to think that he was a part of this case, do you?
No.
You don't have any reason to think that he handled any of the evidence in this case, do you?
She, but no.
I'm sorry. And what True-Allele told you on that test was that it was 10,000 times more likely to be this former agent than it was to be a random match. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Is there another way to say that? 1 in 10,000?
10,000 times more probable, yes.
Okay. Why did the software do that?
That was on the contributor who was less than 4%, which is why we don't report less than 4%.
Was the contributor in this less than 4%? What did True-Allele tell you?
In which sample? I'm now confused.
Number 6.
Well, they would have been compared to the major profile, which would have been Lake and Raleigh, and then the minor profile, which would have been less than 4%.
Okay. On the QC report there, it says that it's over 4%, doesn't it? It's over 4?
The match statistic is over 4.
Okay.
That match statistic, which is the 10,000 times more probable.
Okay. And but the software is running against all of the GBI employees or all the lab employees?
All the ones we have in the database, yes.
Okay. So it's not just considering the 3 contributors that you have, right?
Correct.
Okay. How did this, if we know that this person didn't touch the evidence, didn't work for the lab, how long had they not worked for the lab since?
It's been a few years. They live in a different part of the state.
Okay. Pretty good. In your mind, this is an incorrect result.
It was, but it was to that less than 4% contributor.
Okay. How did it get to this person who was not there? who we know didn't have anything to do with this case, how did the software actually calculate that it was 10,000 times more likely to be this person than a random chance?
It took that person's reference sample and it took the data obtained from that less than 4% contributor, and it issued a likelihood ratio.
Okay.
And since we don't report less than 4% contributors based on our validation, and that we can get some false matches, and that's just because that's the reason we don't report less than 4%.
Because you don't think it's reliable, right?
But less than 4%, it's not. That's why
Okay.
we don't report it.
Okay, but that's what the software itself is doing, is reporting that, correct?
You can still look and see if someone matches even if it's less than 4%.
Okay, and so it was you who considered that an error, not the software.
It was the technical leader who saw that as a false match, so we just went ahead and reported it as inconclusive. No conclusions could be made less than that 4%.
That's all the question I have.
What's the validation?
Validation is when we test software before we use it on casework to make sure it works properly.
And have you at the GBI tested the True Allele program, and have you validated True Allele?
Yes, we have.
How long was that process?
It was several years.
And in the several years that you all validated the True Allele program, did you create a threshold within the GBI that you do not call True Allele results?
Correct.
What is that threshold?
Less than 4%.
Okay. And why don't you call results less than 4% at the GBI?
Because we didn't go down that far in our validation. And once you start getting less than 4%, there may be some of the 21 locations may be missing information. So it will actually use the population database to help fill in the blanks where it's missing information. So it's just not reliable.
And that's why you don't call it?
Correct.
And so in any of the results that we have talked about in this case, specifically the right fingernails of Lake and Riley, which is a mixture between only Jose Ibarra and Lake and Riley, was that below 4%?
No.
Are those reliable results?
Yes.
And were those results produced through your, are they reliable based upon your validation of True Allele?
Correct.
Okay. And True Allele does have an error rate, a demonstrated error rate, is that right?
It has a range where we don't report results, yes, for the match statistics.
And so I want to break that down. Does that mean that you all know what the error rate is of True Allele, correct?
Yes.
And you don't call matches below that threshold, is that right?
Yes.
So that you compensate for the error rate.
Yes.
And so this 4% that he just asked you about is not a reported result, correct?
It isn't.
And because it's not reliable, is that correct?
Correct.
And that would be consistent with what you all do every day at the GBI, and that's why you validate this software, right?
Yes.
So going to back to the fingernails and the statistics versus YSTR and the statistics versus True Allele and which brother is more excluded than the other, both brothers, Argenis and Diego, have been excluded as potential donors underneath the fingernails by True Allele.
Correct.
Okay. Doesn't matter at what level they're excluded.
Correct.
The determination of the number of contributors in a sample that is ran in True Allele, who does that?
I do that.
How do you do that?
I do that based on looking at the data called an electropherogram. If one person should have no more than 2 peaks at each of these 21 locations, or no more than 2 pieces of genetic information. So we look at each of the location, the number of peaks, the imbalance between peak heights in case people share genetic information, and we use that to determine the number of contributors.
And did you determine the number of contributors in this case correctly?
There is an at least caveat that we use, but I believe I did.
And when you run results in True Allele, do you run it more than once?
Yes.
And why do you run it more than once?
To make sure we have concordant genotypes and mixture of weights.
And so from what I heard defense counsel asking you, that if you run it more than once and you get different numbers, does that mean it is unreliable?
No,
Why not?
because it's a random process, so it may assign slightly different probabilities to different possible genotypes. So based on that, it can change slightly the match statistic.
And I heard you use the word concordant. What does concordant mean?
Concordant is generally having the same results as far as possible genotypes at each of the 21 locations.
And when you ran the true allele results in this case, the data in this case, were all of the data that was generated, was all of the data concordant?
It had to be concordant to be reported, so yes.
So if it wasn't concordant, it would not be reported, right?
Correct.
On the rocks and trees that you were asked about would you expect to see somebody else's DNA on the rocks, for example? The rocks in this case had the DNA of only one person on them, is that right?
Correct.
And that only one person on the rocks was Lake and Riley.
Correct.
There was no other foreign profile on those rocks, right?
On the parts that were sampled, yes.
Because you swabbed them, correct?
The serologist swabbed them.
Katrina swabbed them. And you were asked about that and those results. Does that mean no one ever touched those rocks?
No.
Okay. Does that mean that Lake and Riley hit herself in the head with those rocks?
No.
Okay. And why not?
Just because the DNA of another individual is present doesn't mean they never touched the rocks.
Doesn't mean you always leave a DNA behind when you touch something, right?
Yeah, the saying absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, so it's consistent with that.
The sexual assault kit, which I failed to ask you about, did you test the sexual assault kit of Lake and Riley's that was done at autopsy by Dr. DeMarco?
Yes, it was tested.
And what were your results there?
There was a male screening performed to look for the presence of male DNA on the vaginal vault swabs, the anus peri-anus swabs, and the oral cavity swabs of Lake and Riley. The testing failed to reveal the presence of human male DNA.
And why not just test everything in every single case?
Because we have limited resources at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
And I heard lots of questions to you about what was tested, what was not tested. Is it your decision to decide what is tested and what is not tested?
No.
Okay. And you told us that would be a decision made by your manager, Jim Sebastian,
Yes.
in conjunction with other people
Correct.
who are not you.
Yes.
One moment, Your Honor. That's all I have. Thank you.
Very briefly, Judge. What does a match score above 4 mean?
Match score above 4, based on our validation, that's when we start reporting a match. Below that, you could have false inclusions or exclusions.
Okay, so a match score above 4 means that you have reached the threshold above which the validation studies are good, right?
Yes, for samples that are at least 96% of the mixture.
Okay, and on that sample, number 6, your quality control report says it is a match score above 4, correct?
Yes.
Okay. It wasn't reported because it wasn't reproducible, correct?
It wasn't reported because it was determined to be a false match to data that did not meet the requirements of our validation for us to report as reproducible.
Thank you, Judge.
Anything else?
No, sir.
You should be excused.
Yes, sir.
Any objection, Mr. Kirby?
No, Judge.
You're excused. Any other evidence, Ms. Ross?
Your Honor, at this time, the state of Georgia rests.
Very well. State is rested. Is Mr. Albar ready for me to ask him questions about his decision to testify or not?
Yes, Your Honor.
All Mr. Barra, I'll leave, Ms. Smith, I don't know what's gonna work best, because I'm gonna be asking these questions directly to him. All right, okay. Mr. Barra, I'm asking these questions directly to you.
Señor Ibarra, le voy a hacer esta pregunta directamente a usted.
Do you understand that you have a right to testify, and if you want to testify, no one can prevent you from doing so?
Usted tiene el derecho a testificar, si decide no testificar, nadie puede tomar eso en contra suya. ¿Comprende esto? ¿Comprende esto? Yes, sir.
Do you understand that no one can make or compel you to testify?
Nadie puede obligarlo a usted o compelerlo a que usted testifique. ¿Comprende esto? Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand that you have a right to not testify if you do not want to?
Usted tiene el derecho a no testificar si no desea testificar. ¿Comprende esto? Yes, sir.
Do you understand that not your lawyer, but you personally are the one that decides whether you will testify or not?
La decisión de testificar o no testificar no es la de sus abogados, sino la de usted personalmente. ¿Comprende esto? Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand if you do not testify, then the court will instruct myself that it is not to be held against you? Typically, I would tell a jury that.
Si usted decide no testificar, la Corte se diría a sí misma que usted no estaría obligado a hacerlo y no tomaría eso en contra suya. ¿Comprende esto? Yes, Your Honor.
You understand if you choose to testify, you'll be examined by your counsel and cross-examined by the district attorney.
Si usted decide testificar, usted sería confrontado y preguntado por sus propios abogados y por la fiscalía como tal, y por la Corte. ¿Comprende esto? Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Ibarra, do you want to testify?
Señor Ibarra, ¿desea usted testificar? No, sir.
Anything from counsel regarding that decision, and can you say if you believe he understands his rights to testify or not, Mr. Donovan?
Yes, we believe he understands his rights, and we don't have anything else to add to his responses.
I find the defendant has decided to not testify with a complete understanding of his rights.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Beck, any evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. You may proceed.
The defense calls Joseph Clementi to the stand.
Clementi. Mr. Clementi up here.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please take a seat. I'd like to start by asking you to state and then spell your name for our court reporter.
Joseph Clementi, JOSEPHCLEMENTI.
And Mr. Clementi, what do you do for a living?
I work at a music management company.
And where do you live?
I live in Athens, Georgia.
Were you living in Athens, Georgia in February of this year?
I was.
Mr. Clementi, do you sometimes take exercise by going for runs?
I do.
And did you take a run on the morning of February 22nd?
Yes, I did.
Did you, after finding out about this case, contact the police about what you had observed on your run?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember approximately when you contacted police?
I believe it was the day after February 22nd, so February 23rd.
And you met with UGA police officers?
I didn't meet with them, we just had a call.
Okay. So you got a phone interview with the police officers?
Yes.
And then afterwards, you sent them some pictures to kind of clarify what you had said on the phone call?
That's correct.
Okay. So I want to just ask for you to briefly recap when you ran and what you saw, please.
Sure. So I started my run at 9:39 a.m. on Thursday, and I ran for, I believe, 36 minutes. And I ran around Lake Herrick, starting at the intramural fields, and I ran for 3.5 miles. And what I noted to the police officers was that I saw an individual that was wearing dark clothing and seemed out of the ordinary.
So let's kind of break that down. You started running at 9:39. How do you know that time?
I tracked my run with a running app called Nike Run Club.
And so when you were reporting to the police when you were running, you were comparing to that Nike Run Club?
That's correct.
Okay. And then you said you saw an individual around Lake Herrick at the intramural fields. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And did you prepare for the police a sort of a screenshot of the area with a star where you saw this individual?
That's correct.
Okay, I am going to show it to you, and this is going to be marked as Defense 6. Let me show it to State Mr. Clementi, do you recognize the document I handed you?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
It's a map of Lake Herrick, and there's a star placed on where I said I saw the individual, and one of the pictures has an arrow, which is where I was describing that the individual was walking.
Okay. At this time, Your Honor, I'd like to move Defense Exhibit 6 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, sir.
Submitted.
Mr. Clementi, the state has entered a large map of the area, so I'm going to turn around and see if you can kind of put where you marked on this little mini map in context of this big map, okay?
Sure.
So, Mr. Clementi, do you see over here at the top left side of the board where it says Lake Herrick?
Yes.
And can you say where on this map you would have seen the individual?
By the retention pond.
And do you see the retention pond marked on this map?
I do.
And where is it?
It's in the southwest corner.
Your Honor, may he briefly come down just to point to where he saw the individual?
Right.
Come on
You
down.
take that corner with you. You see that, it's right here to your left?
The silver pointer. So for the record, you're pointing to the north of the retention pond?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you also said you saw it moving. With your pointer, can you just kind of indicate the direction?
Sure. So there's the trail that's going around here, and then it curves, and the individual is going that way.
Did you get that, Madam Reporter? Okay. Thank you. You can have a seat, Mr. Clementi. Why did this individual catch your attention?
He was not in typical athletic gear, which at that time that I was running, everyone was pretty much running or hiking that I was passing, and the individual was wearing very dark clothing, and they seemed to be wandering kind of aimlessly.
And You said you started your run at 9:39. What time did you see this individual?
In between 9:46 and 9:48.
And again, how are you so certain about what time you saw this individual?
Using the Nike Run Club app, I can pace. I know my pacing during that time, and so I can see 7 minutes into my run where I was exactly on the map.
Okay. And so you used the map and Nike Run Club to come up with this 2-minute window where you saw the individual?
Yeah, yeah, it shows me where.
And the last question I have for you is, you say dark clothing. Can you give any specifics as to what dark clothing you saw?
I really just remember just black or dark bluish clothing, and that there was either a hood or a hat on this person.
Just one moment, Mr. Clementi. I neglected to ask this, Mr. Clementi. Can you describe the height and the build of the person you saw?
It was the person had a more masculine build, and based on that, I thought it was a man, and they were probably above 5'9".
Did you notice, or could you tell if they were slender or more chubby?
Their weight didn't really stand out to me. Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Hey, good.
Could you identify this person if you saw them again?
No.
Did you see this person's face?
Not really, no.
Do you know what race this individual is?
No, I don't.
Could this be a white male?
Yes.
Could be a black male?
Yeah.
Could be a Hispanic male?
Mm-hmm.
Could be an Asian male?
Yeah.
Did you notice if this individual was wearing gloves or anything?
No, I don't really remember or recall.
And what kind of look did you get of this individual? How long did you look at this person?
Sorry?
How long did you look at this person?
Oh, I mean, it was really a split second, but they seemed, like I said, they seemed to be kind of aimlessly wandering.
Okay. And you noticed a hooded sweatshirt, you said?
Yes, or a hat. Their head was covered by something.
And khaki-colored pants?
Yeah, I wasn't totally sure what. I remember their dark clothing really stood out to me on the torso above.
Okay. What about the pants?
PM coverage you can count on.
And I'm Justin Farmer.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linda Stouffer. Let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Brad Nitz in Severe Weather Center 2. Brad.
Well, we were standing here yesterday with mid-70s and sunshine, and I warned you about this, and here it is. Unfortunately, we have breaks in the rain falling overhead across the heart of the city and some of the suburbs closest to town. But even there, conditions are wet. And we have some heavier downpours now, parts of the northwest metro. So we're talking Bartow moving into Cherokee County. Heavy downpours, Cartersville up towards I-75. Can't rule out a rumble of thunder or two as we head through the next few days. No severe weather threat with this, and scattered showers back into eastern Alabama will continue to move in. And then you can see a little break as the rain tapered off here over the last couple of hours. That light to moderate rain pushing to the south and east. And here's what's coming for us. The rain coming to an end. Strong winds are going to be blowing beginning late tomorrow, and then we'll keep strong winds around for 3 days, turning in and blowing in much colder air. Take you through that timing coming up.
Brad, thank you. Tonight, we're getting new insight into the Georgia Court of Appeals decision to abruptly cancel a hearing to remove Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis from the election interference case. And Channel 2's Richard Elliott is live outside the Court of Appeals, where judges may at this point have so much information they might not need another hearing.
Yeah, a lot of people were wondering why the Georgia Court of Appeals kind of abruptly canceled that December 5th hearing. But court officials say the judges have so many documents, so many briefs, that in this case, that canceling that hearing wouldn't affect or delay their decision.
The Georgia Court of Appeals issued this abrupt notice stating that oral argument, quote, is hereby canceled until further notice of this court. The judges are deciding whether a lower court made a mistake when it allowed Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis to remain on the election interference case against now President-elect Donald Trump and others. The defendants wanted her removed because of her relationship with then Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade. No reason as to why it canceled the hearing, but the court administrator gave me some insight. Quote, the court is working its way through the 1,000-plus pages of briefing in these related appeals, and that canceling the argument will not delay the opinion. Former DeKalb County DA Robert James thinks the judges have all the information they need.
And if it's a situation where they're not permitting oral argument, it usually means that there's records sufficient and the court doesn't need any more documentation or read any more transcript, and they can make a decision based on what they have.
Attorney Scott Grubman represented one of the election interference defendants who pleaded guilty months ago. He says this appeal remains important, even if the criminal case against Donald Trump is on hold until after he leaves office, because there are still a number of defendants who can still stand trial.
And at least as of now, no court has ruled that they enjoy presidential immunity just because one of their co-conspirators happens to have just been elected president.
The court is expected to make its ruling by mid-March next year. We're live in downtown Atlanta. Richard Elliott, Channel 2 Action News.
And we have more details on the timeline. A grand jury indicted then former President Donald Trump and 18 others in August 2023. January 8th of this year, an attorney for one defendant filed a motion to disqualify Willis over her romantic relationship with Wade. On March 15th, Judge Scott McAfee ruled that one of them must leave the case, and then Wade resigned. In May, an attorney for Donald Trump appealed that ruling.
Tonight, the state's rested its case against the man charged with murdering nursing student Laken Riley on the Georgia campus. Late today, we learned that Jose Ibarra will not testify in this trial. It came after a surveillance video showed Laken Riley out jogging just minutes before she was killed. Channel 2's Michael Seiden was inside the courtroom today in Athens on what was quite the day. Very emotional for Riley's family.
Well, court came to an end with the defense beginning to call its witnesses. We know they will be back in the courtroom tomorrow. In the meantime, though, it was an emotional morning here as the state wrapped up its case.
Mr. Ibarra, do you want to testify?
Señor Ibarra, ¿desea testificar? No, sir.
Communicating through a translator, accused killer Jose Ibarra told the court that he will not testify in his own defense Tuesday. This after the state rested his case following 3 days of testimony. The 26-year-old, who authorities say is here illegally from Venezuela, is accused of killing 22-year-old Laken Riley while she was out for her morning run on the UGA campus in February. Now, in court Tuesday, the judge watched this surveillance video that captured Riley as she jogged along the running trails. An investigator with the UGA Police Department gave heart-wrenching testimony about Riley's final moments alive. This is the text she sent to her mom right before she left for her run.
Good morning, about to go for a run. If you're free to go.
Then 8 minutes later at 9:03 a.m., Riley called her mother, but she didn't answer, according to the testimony. Now at 9:11, Riley called 911. Riley's mother eventually called her daughter back around 9:24 a.m., but when Riley didn't answer, her mother knew something was seriously wrong.
Please call me. I'm worried sick about you.
Is that call and is that text read?
It is not.
Is that text responded to?
It is not.
Riley's sister and stepfather also tried to reach her, and surveillance video showed her roommates searching for her along the running trails. But it wasn't until 12:38 in the afternoon when police finally discovered her body.
Her cause of death is the combined effects of blunt force head trauma and asphyxia.
And again, the defendant, Jose Ibarra, decided that he wanted a bench trial, which means there's no jury, and ultimately his fate will be decided by the judge. We're in Athens. I'm Michael Seiden, Channel 2 Action News.
Let's keep it here for our continuing coverage as we're having a closer look at the murder trial. Attorney and former DeKalb County District Attorney Robert James gives us some local legal insight and helps us break down the case that's getting national attention. We'll have that in our next 15 minutes.
Tonight, neighbors in DeKalb County say they don't feel safe after a man was seen on camera committing lewd acts. We blurred the video because it's graphic. It's the person investigators are searching for right now after a woman told us the man did the same thing to her 6 months ago. Channel 2's Tom Jones is live in DeKalb County tonight. Police are hoping someone can help them arrest the man.
Yeah, Linda, police really want this man off the streets, and so do tenants here who have been exposed to his lewd acts. I spoke to one woman who says she watched her doorbell video and saw him on there doing something disturbing.
That didn't sit right with me.
It didn't sit right with this tenant at the Belle Vista Apartments after she looked at her Ring doorbell video and saw this man exposed and pleasuring himself in front of her unit. We're not showing her face because of the sensitive nature of this story. She says the man performed the lewd act around 5 that evening.
For anyone that's that comfortable with doing that in the daytime, I feel like they wouldn't have a problem grabbing a child.
She says the man was focused on her neighbor's unit and thought he evaded her doorbell camera.
I don't think he even paid attention to my camera right there.
I spoke by phone with the neighbor whose unit the man was focused on. That neighbor told me he is the same man who performed the same lewd act in front of her back in June.
It was very disturbing, very scary. It's weird and it's disheartening.
She thinks the man came back looking for her.
It was strategic how he came up the stairs. He didn't come front and breezeway.
Police say the same man performed the same lewd act in front of another apartment back in June.
It's very scary.
This woman thinks he is a threat to the community. She wants police to locate him as soon as possible.
I hope that he gets the help that he needs, because apparently something is wrong.
And police say they have canvassed the complex looking for other video of this man, but were unsuccessful. They're asking anyone who knows who he is, where he is, to contact them. DeKalb County, Tom Jones, Channel 2 Action News.
Tonight, questions in Washington about whether the Senate will confirm Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. Gaetz resigned from Congress days before the House Ethics Committee was preparing to release a report on allegations of sexual misconduct and drug use. Channel 2's Karen Greer is live in the Satellite News Center tonight.
Well, Linda, today President-elect Trump's pick for Attorney General faces an uphill battle on Capitol Hill as members of Congress call for the report expected to detail allegations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use be made public, adding pressure on a growing number of Republican senators.
In everybody's best interest, including the president's, not to be surprised by some information that might come out during the confirmation hearing and the background checks.
Mr. Trump has been upping pressure to calling some senators directly. An attorney for two women who testified in the House investigation claims one of his clients saw Gaetz having sex with a minor. Gaetz denies all wrongdoing and notes that the DOJ closed its investigation of the allegations without bringing charges.
She testified in July of 2017 party. She was walking out to the pool area and she looked to her right and she saw Representative Gaetz having sex with her friend who was 17.
And at the time he was a sitting congressman?
I don't know if she was aware of who he was at the time, but at the time, yes, he was a sitting congressman for about 6 months. My client testified to the House that her understanding was that Matt Gaetz did not know that she was a minor, and that when he learned that she was a minor, that he broke off things and did not continue a sexual relationship until she turned 18.
Now, the House Ethics Committee will meet Wednesday to decide whether to release that report. Live in the Satellite News Center, Karen Greer, Channel 2 Action News.
We are remembering Rosalind Carter. Today marks a year since the former First Lady passed away. Mrs. Carter died home in Plains on this day last year. Her family and husband, former President Jimmy Carter, were by her side. 26 years old. Today, the Carter Center in Northeast Atlanta posted this Instagram video. It honors Mrs. Carter for her legacy in mental health, caregiving, and human rights. The center says her life's a reminder anyone can make a difference by showing compassion for others. Jimmy Carter turned 100 years old last month. He's been in home hospice for more than a year and a half now. In September, his grandson Jason said while Mr. Carter cannot do much on his own, he is still emotionally engaged.
Scattered showers, even a few downpours here in parts of the Northwest Metro, mild temperatures, but I'm tracking a clearing sky, gusty winds, and some much colder air headed our way. Take you through that timing coming up.
The 80-year-old woman with dementia wandered away from her home. She hasn't been seen in a week.
We just want her back home safely.
Why the woman's family says police need to do more to help with the search.
The family of a man who died in a crash are upset that people are fighting for the driver to be freed from prison.
Somebody died.
Why supporters of the driver say his punishment is not fair.
Tonight, the transition and the plan for mass deportations. Just how will it work? Plus, allowing long-range U.S. weapons inside Russia with restrictions lifted. What's next? World News Tonight with David Muir is the most watched newscast in America.
Today's weekday payday keyword is treasure. Enter at WSBTV.com for your chance to win $1,000.
Closed captioning sponsored by Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
On average, Americans change jobs every 4 years, and millions of 401k retirement accounts are left behind. Tomorrow at 5 on Channel 2 Action News, consumer advisor Clark Howard went out and gave 401k advice.
Do you know what you're supposed to do with that when you take a new job?
Answered people's questions.
That's the best news.
And will show you how to find that money and put it to work. Join Karen Greer, George Estevez, tomorrow at 5 on Channel 2 Action News.
Last year, more clients hired Morgan & Morgan than ever before. Protecting America. Fighting for you. Injured? Call Morgan & Morgan.
Nothing feels as good as driving a new Hyundai. And now you can get a great deal on your favorite model at the Hyundai sales event. Plus, every Hyundai is backed by America's best warranty. Hurry to the Hyundai Getaway sales event before this offer ends. Make your next getaway your best one yet. Get a Tucson.
Stayed 4 inches and falling. Around Atlanta, at Chamblee, it was cloudy and 61, wind variable at 6. At Marietta, it was cloudy and 63, wind southeast at 7. At Mableton, it was cloudy and 62, wind variable at 6. At Peachtree City, it was cloudy and 62, wind south at 5. At Lawrenceville, it was cloudy and 60, wind southeast at 5. At Cartersville, with light rain, it was 63, wind variable at 3 gusting to 12. At Kennesaw, with light rain, it was 62, wind east at 3. At Hampton, it was cloudy and 62, wind southeast at 6. At Covington, with drizzle. At Monroe, it was cloudy, the temperature was 61. At Athens, it was cloudy, the temperature was 61. At Gainesville, with light rain and fog, it was 61, wind southeast at 3. At Macon, with light rain, it was 63, wind southeast at 8. At Columbus, with light rain, it was 66, wind east at 6. At Birmingham, with light rain and fog, it was 68, wind calm.
Cobb County Bureau Chief Michelle Newell is live in Marietta, where the victims' relatives are furious.
He was the major key of this family, and now it's gone, and everybody is devastated.
Joaquin Finney was a father with a third baby on the way when he was killed in a crash in 2022.
Justice. When do we want it? Now.
Now Finney's mother says these calls for justice, coming from supporters of the man who killed her son, reopened wounds her family has tried so hard to heal.
For our family, it's like nerve-wracking to know that after 10 months, you decide to have this big rally and say the judge is wrong.
It's been very hard, just knowing that the justice system failed him.
Devontae Adams' mother says her son, who is in prison, was the designated driver and fell asleep at the wheel.
According to Georgia law, a case like this should be a misdemeanor for an accidental death. So when did it become a crime in Georgia to be tired?
Investigators say Adams was going 97 in a 55-mile-per-hour speed zone when he crashed. He signed a 15-year plea deal, serving 5 years in prison.
Devontae gets to talk to his son and his mother. My son don't get to talk to me. He don't get to talk to his sister. He don't get to talk to his kids, his grandma, Nobody. He gone.
And Finney's mother told me Adams wasn't the designated driver for her son that night. Documents we obtained show there was no alcohol in Finney's system. Now, we did hear from the DA about this. They sent us a statement that says, in part, unfortunate, poor choices that were made that day resulted in the loss of life in Adams' family, saying they're still going to try to fight this. Live from Cobb County, Michelle Newell, Channel 2 Action News.
A woman held captive inside a house during a standoff is sharing her story. It happened earlier this afternoon as SWAT teams tried to serve domestic violence warrants on Narelle Pauling. Tiffany Mackett still has severe bruising on her face after she says Pauling hit her and left the home.
I got home this morning, he was still, he was in the house. So from there, the cops got called, and I've just been waiting in the house ever since, in the bedroom with him.
That standoff ended peacefully after a couple of hours. Pauling's in jail, facing multiple charges.
A plan has now been approved to spend nearly $2 million on additional security for the new Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. On Monday, Atlanta City Council voted 9-2 to pass the motion. It was in response to the ongoing violent protests targeting the facility.
A Dahlonega man who was wanted for a probation violation is now charged with trafficking meth. The GBI arrested 59-year-old Tony Sullins. Agents say that they seized the meth and dozens of pills. They originally went to the home to arrest him for violating probation.
In the last 10 minutes, we told you the prosecution rested its case against the man accused of murdering a nursing student in Athens. New at 6, Channel 2's George Estevez and attorney Robert James are here in the studio to break down the trial so far.
Let's go ahead and do that, Robert. Thanks for being here. Question one, this case has gone by really fast. Why?
It's a bench trial, which means that, you don't have jury selection. Evidence is expedited. It moves faster, so it's not a jury trial. It's going to go faster.
Okay, so let's talk about now the defense is up. What is the decision behind not putting Jose Ibarra on the stand, the defendant in this case?
Well, ultimately, defense lawyers don't want him to take the stand and say something that's going to damage his case, that's going to make it worse, and so that's why they don't put him up.
Now, does that look bad? Does that look good? What does that do for his chances?
Well, it doesn't help his case because there's a lot of circumstantial evidence in this case that points to him, and so a judge or a jury, but a judge in this case would want him to get up and defend his position.
Let's talk about now the last question, which is the speed of this trial, yes, but once it gets into the judge's domain, it's going to go even faster.
Yes, juries can take, days, sometimes even weeks to deliberate. You don't expect a judge to deliberate for 3 or 4 days or 2 or 3 weeks, so I expect it to move fast.
All right, Robert James, former DA, DeKalb County, thank you so much for coming. At 11 o'clock, we're going to talk about the impact this case will have on immigration, the battle that started in the White House. Thank you so much, Robert James. And count on Channel 2 Action News for continuing coverage throughout the trial on air and online at WSBTV.com. You can also watch our live streams from the courtroom each and every day. Linda?
Right now, a beautiful symbol of storm recovery is headed to the White House. This North Carolina Fraser fir shows what it means to be Southeast strong. The tree grower hopes it represents family farms in western North Carolina hit so hard by those devastating floods.
This tree to represent the faith and hope and love and joy and family and generosity, all those good things.
All those good things. About a quarter of the fresh Christmas trees in the U.S. come from North Carolina. The White House tree is set to be cut and sent tomorrow.
New at 6, a homeowner in DeKalb County got a shock when she opened her water bill. It was more than $1,000.
How do you afford to water your lawn in DeKalb County?
Channel 2 Action News Investigates has learned what homeowners can do to avoid getting big bills like that.
Thieves are posing as utility workers and robbing customers. New at 6, how you can tell if you're about to get scammed.
And if you watch College Game Day Saturday, you may have seen this. A UGA student with an $800,000 field goal. In the next half hour, we are talking with the student about that kick.
I'm Channel 2's Lori Wilson.
And I'm Fred Blankenship. Our team looks out for you every day, warning you of rip-offs and scams happening where you live, so you're prepared for the day.
Join us on Channel 2 Action News this morning, every day from 4:30 to 7.
Next, E.T. The cast of Gladiator 2 takes over L.A. Plus, E.T.'s Hawaii Week takes you behind the scenes of Moana And
this is E.T. Then and Now.
Tonight at 7:30, sponsored by John Foy and Associates.
We created the guaranteed offer to make selling your home stress-free. Because let's face it, selling your home can be one of the most stressful experiences of your life. And with a guaranteed cash offer, you've got a guaranteed closing. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer and start packing.
When you want to make junk disappear, leave it where it is. 1-800-GOT-JUNK is full-service junk removal. I've got a partner who lives down the street from you, and we're anxious to come to your rescue. All you have to do...
Highs in the mid-50s. Lows in the mid-30s. Sunday and Sunday night, clear. Highs in the lower 60s. Lows around 40. Monday and Monday night, partly cloudy. Highs in the upper 60s. Lows around 50. Tuesday and Tuesday night, mostly cloudy. Highs around 70. Lows in the lower 50s. For more detailed weather, water, and climate information, please visit our website at weather.gov/Atlanta. The Atlanta Climate Summary for this evening, as of 4 p.m., November 19th, 2024. Today's high temperature of 63 degrees occurred at 2:38 a.m. The normal high is 63. The record high is 80 degrees, which was set in 1942. Today's low temperature of 59 degrees occurred at 7 a.m. The normal low is 43. The record low is 18 degrees, which was set in 1903. 1.58 inches of precipitation fell today, which brings the monthly total to 2.66 inches. This is 0.13 inches above the normal amount of 2.53 inches for November. The total precipitation for the year now stands at 58.49 inches, which is 14.08 inches above normal. There were 4 heating degree days today. This brings the monthly total to 52. The yearly total since July 1st is 97. There were no cooling degree days today. This leaves the monthly total at 41. The yearly total since January 1st is 2,527. Sunset tonight is at 5:32 p.m. Sunrise tomorrow is at 7:15 a.m. Here is the hazardous weather outlook.
Country and the nation's toughest schedule to boot. As we head into these final 2 weeks of the regular season, there are currently 6 SEC teams alive for a spot in the conference championship game in Atlanta, and both spots will not be decided until the final week of the regular season. Georgia, though, still needs some help to return to Atlanta for that game, but safety Malachi Stark's telling me if Georgia wins their final 2 games of the regular season, yeah, he believes they are definitely postseason bound.
I think we have the ability to be in. I think you never know what can happen. But we have the ability to be in. We just got to go take care of business.
That they do. All right, a win Thursday night against NC State clinches a perfect record for Georgia Tech this season over at Bobby Dodd Stadium. So far, this is the biggest result of the year. Trust me, they got it going. They won the game against 4th-ranked Miami. There you go. See, they're partying. Head coach Brent Key says there's more to play for, but earning an unblemished record at home, that absolutely matters.
It's happened 2 times in the last, 60 years, 58 years, 60 years. So, for these kids, those are things you want to stack. We've shown glimpses of being a great football team at times. So we know what we're capable of doing. Right now, it comes down, are we willing to do that every single week?
Earlier this afternoon, Carl Smesko, one of the winningest head coaches in the history of women's college basketball, was introduced as the 8th head coach in the history of the Atlanta Dream. Smesko coming to Atlanta from Florida Gulf Coast University, where he won 85% of his games over his 23 seasons in Fort Myers. He led the Eagles to at least 25 wins in 14 consecutive seasons. The only other head coach to do that, Gino Auriemma over at UConn.
We share a vision for Atlanta Dream basketball that we hope to put in place and make the city of Atlanta proud. I'm excited about the team that we have and what we're going to be capable of building here, and I can't wait to get started.
Carl will move full-time to Atlanta next month and get going with the ladies in April when training camp gets underway. Brad?
Isaac, wet weather now, of course, and continuing into the evening. I'll show you when that moves out and when the coldest air of the season so far moves in. That timing coming up next.
A search is underway for this 80-year-old woman with dementia. Her family put these flyers all over DeKalb County, hoping you can help them find their loved one.
One local school system is going high tech, how some teachers are now using virtual reality to teach students.
Georgia Natural Gas invites you to catch country music's hottest stars at the 58th Annual CMA Awards, Wednesday, November 20th at 8 p.m. on Channel 2.
Georgia Natural Gas keeps it simple, so get our lowest rate of the year at gng.com, because these days, simple is just what you need.
Are you tired of dealing with a bathroom that's stuck in the past? With cracked tiles, an outdated vanity, or a shower that's seen better days? Imagine this, your dream bathroom completely installed in just 2 to 3 days. At West Shore Home, we've helped thousands of people completely transform their bathroom, and we're ready to do the same for you. You can get a beautiful new bath and complement it perfectly with matching flooring, a vanity, and toilet. All this in just 2 to 3 days with our convenient installation process. But we don't stop there. We follow up with every customer a couple days after the installation to make sure that you're totally satisfied with the project. We want you to have peace of mind knowing that your new bathroom is perfect. Don't wait to renovate. For a limited time, we're no payments and no interest for 18 months. Plus, if you schedule right now, your project will qualify for free installation. Call the number on your screen or schedule online at westshorebath.com to take advantage of West Shore Home's Black Friday savings.
Owners and lessees of an eligible competitive luxury brand vehicle get this low mileage lease on this 2024 Cadillac Lyriq Tech for around $339 per month.
COPD, I have bad days.
Just south of here, about 155 Street and Harlem River Drive. First 2 units arrived on scene and were confronted with an extensive brush fire, approximately 10 to 15 acres, about 10 to 15 football fields, in extremely dense brush terrain on very hilly, a hilly section of the park, with not a lot of hydrant or water sources. So it was a labor-intensive incident to get our folks and our equipment in place. They quickly identified the flanks of the fire from the Harlem River Drive up to where we are right now, and from 155 till just a little bit north of where we are. We had approximately 138 firefighters and medics on scene, and it rose to a third alarm. And right now we are currently in an under control status. We will be leaving a fire engineer throughout the night to maintain a watch to make sure it does not rekindle. Commissioner?
Good evening. I'm Mark Folk. I'm Deputy Commissioner and Chief Operating Officer for New York City Parks. First and foremost, want to thank the FDNY for their responsiveness here, not just tonight in Highbridge, but to every brush fire we've been having recently in parks. Also want to acknowledge my many parks colleagues that are here that serve in a supporting capacity to FDNY at every fire incidents we've been experiencing recently. Also want to certainly acknowledge our colleagues at NYPD and the Office of Emergency Management for their support in these instances. Obviously, parks are vital to every New Yorker, regardless of the time of day or the season of the year. Part of our collective responsibility as New Yorkers, though, is to take care and safeguard our parks. We just want to remind all New Yorkers that during this drought, there are certain requirements and restrictions, including Mayor Adams' recent ban on barbecuing and grilling, as well as open flames and open fire in parks. Also to remind everybody that smoking of any type is prohibited or illegal in parks at all times. So again, if all New Yorkers don't smoke, don't grill or barbecue, don't have open flames in parks, we will minimize the possibility of fires such as what happened here in Highbridge tonight. So again, want to thank FDNY for their responsiveness.
All right, we're going to open it up to some questions. Lucy?
Where this fire started, Mark, is that a public traffic area? Do people get along there, get out there? What is the usage of this fire?
The location where the fire took place, extremely hilly area, not a lot of public tracks, not a lot of access in and out. It's currently under investigation by our marshals, and the brush fire task force will be here throughout the night and in the morning, do an extensive survey of the area, try and find out what exactly caused this.
Rebecca? Can you talk about the impact on people who were driving along Harlem River Drive? Obviously, we saw a lot of fire trucks over there.
Well, again, one of my concerns down just south of here on Harlem River Drive, a very heavily trafficked area. We had to bring our trucks and our equipment down there to get on the opposite side of this. One of my concerns was the traffic actually interfering with our operations. However, we closed off the off-ramp and we gave our folks enough space to operate.
Any more questions? So yesterday there was a drought warning announced for all of New York City, and they're asking citizens to be more mindful of water conservation. How does that tie into today and needing water to fight this fire? Do you have a message for New Yorkers about water conservation?
Definitely. The message that the FDNY and Parks and the city as a whole be very mindful of any smoking in and around the area, in your public parks. If the public sees any unauthorized fire, flames, any people, Mayor Adams says we can't use any flames for cooking or barbecue. Give 911 a call. Let's get ahead of this because this type of thing. We were fortunate tonight because we didn't have much of a wind condition. In a brush fire, the two major problems are wind and the flames really taking off. Tonight we didn't have the wind. If we had the wind, it would have been a much bigger problem. So if anybody in the public sees somebody with an unauthorized fire, cooking or something like that, definitely call 911 and report it.
Do you have a possible estimate on the damages or in terms of monetary value?
Well, there was nothing in terms of infrastructure in the park that was affected directly. It was primarily just the brush and the trees. But again, you're losing park space because of a fire. How much does that cost? The commissioner could probably speak to that.
Yeah, when we have again, as the chief said, there was no damage to any structures in the park. When we have the light of day and when the fire is fully out, our natural resource staff will come in and assess the environmental conditions as we've been doing at all of the brush fires.
All right. Thank you, folks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
All right, you're just listening in there to officials briefly give an update on this brush fire there in the Harlem area, talking about the topography of it, making it difficult to battle. And this is a number of fires that we've seen break out just around the Big Apple as they are dealing with that extreme drought. We were detailing the Jennings Creek fire in recent weeks. They're just around that on the New Jersey-New York border, straddling that very closely, burning quite a few acres. But we've seen this time and time again, different fires break out in different wooded areas around there. So we're following it very closely here on Live Now from Fox. We're also monitoring another fire on the other coast, on the West Coast in Los Angeles, a two-story building. We're hearing reports that it is vacant. So no one inside, but there are plenty of fire crews on hand as the roof basically gone at this point. The smoke billowing into the air in Los Angeles just past 3:30 there local time. Crews continue to battle this near downtown. The area, not exactly sure, but it is close to downtown. This multi-story building with plenty of crews as they pull out just to see what's going on. A pretty big building, and it's maybe good that the buildings adjacent aren't on fire because it might be able to jump, but crews trying to avoid that scenario here on Tuesday afternoon. All right, let's take a quick 2-minute break. We'll get more headlines after this.
What if we never started Gunner, or bought our first work van, or believed in the American dream? What if we never decided to install our first roof, or our second, or our 5,000th? What if we never felt the need to put the customer first? Would we have ever earned all of these awards, or felt the satisfaction of giving a family a new roof over their head, or started Gunner Cares to support our heroes? And best of all, we're just getting started.
Welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox Live. Pictured there in Los Angeles. Crews continue to battle this fire at this vacant home there just near the downtown area. You can see them putting plenty of water on this as the smoke continues to billow up into the atmosphere in Southern California. About 3:30 local time there. Crews battling it. We're hearing reports that this is a vacant property, so it doesn't appear there anyone inside. So that is a good sign as the fire breaking out. Crews on hand, fire personnel there to try to put this one out right now on this Tuesday afternoon. All right, Andy Mack, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's take you out right now to Chicago and some tense moments as Mayor Brandon Johnson unveiling a revised plan. The initial 2025 budget had a $300 million property tax hike. He cut that one, slashed it in half to just $150 million. Let's listen into some of these comments from earlier today from the Windy City.
Agreement and conversations as such, I think are absolutely appropriate. And I'm looking forward to having those conversations moving forward.
There are concerns on this project that the city is moving too quickly on rezoning and facilitating that project, even as groups are pushing for more community involvement. Is the city moving too quickly? Can you address those concerns from residents?
Well, are we moving with expediency to ensure that there's economic development on the southeast side of Chicago? Absolutely. My chief operations officer, we just kind of looked at each other for a second because remember, I moved an executive order with the Cut the Tape initiative that would speed up the process so that we don't leave money on the table. But I will allow my chief operations officer just to speak to why we are moving with that type of pace and what it means for our economy. John.
Good morning. John Robertson, Chief Operating Officer for the City of Chicago. You know, it's really important that, especially in challenging economic times, that government acts as an enabler of economic development, acts as an enabler of the creation of jobs. And so the Cut the Tape initiative that the mayor asked me to lead is all about trying to figure out within city government, how do we make things happen? How do we get it done? And so we're working very closely with all of the stakeholders. We're working very closely with the developer. We're working very closely with the state and other partners to do everything possible to move this very quantum leap in terms of technology and opportunity. Look, this is the second quantum computer that will be, well, this is the first quantum computer that will be built in the U.S. It has significant impacts and implications, both in terms of healthcare, in terms of the financial sector, in terms of solving some of our societal problems in very real ways by utilizing this technology as the foundation to accelerate learning and to accelerate solutions. So we think that this is an extraordinary opportunity. That's why we got involved in it. That's why we were able to partner with the state and with the county to make this happen. And so, yes, we are moving at the speed of light in order to get this project done and create the jobs so that the people of the city of Chicago are the beneficiaries.
Thank you, John.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
I was wondering, federal relief dollars, they've been under discussion to help lower the property tax hike. Is some or all of the $31.5 million in ARPA funds that were slated to do a second round of guaranteed income payments, are we going to see any of that money, be taken away to lower the property tax hike? Can we still expect a second round of payments?
Well, there are, first of all, the whole point of the ARPA dollars was to essentially invest in communities that have been historically disinvested in. And so that reflects our values, right? And I made it very clear from the very beginning as line of questions have come forward, am I going to spend those resources? So I believe we've answered that question, right? We're going to spend it. Now, there are some alders who don't see it that way. They don't, necessarily believe or agree that these dollars should go directly to individuals that have been historically disinvested in. As I said, the accumulation of wealth has been abysmal, particularly for black families, right? So you have black families that have accumulated zero wealth. Do you understand how crippling and debilitating that can be when you wake up every single day and you hope just to break even? You know what I'm saying? It's like the song in The Wiz, you can't win, child, and you can't get out the game. Don't worry, just Google it. Just trust me, right? And so it's that type of desperate state and unfortunate set of circumstances that have left people and families behind. Now, again, there are alders that don't necessarily agree with those that sentiment or those values. But I'm going to continue to remain and keep an open mind of how we can make those investments, GBI, as well as develop investment, I believe, Chase, for small businesses as well. So those resources can actually touch the communities that they were designed to touch. But again, as I've said from the very beginning, alders will come with ideas. Some of them are one-time solutions, which, quite frankly, does not get at with what we need to get at, which is repair the structural harm. But we remain open for those type of suggestions and feedback.
And, on the police budget, your administration is still budgeting less for police lawsuits than actual costs. You're keeping the exact line item amount that former Mayor Lori Lightfoot had despite rising costs. What's the reasoning for that? And what is your administration doing to try and help lower overall the cost of police-related lawsuits?
Yeah, my Deputy Mayor for Community Safety is here. I'll let him just weigh in on some of our, larger goals, and look, there's no secret that the amount of money that we're spending on settlement is astronomical, and it highlights a couple of things. It highlights, one, that constitution of policing did not exist, and so now we're paying out settlements that were a part of abuse cases before I was out of high school, right? So what our ultimate work is, our ultimate responsibility, one, is to make sure that moving forward, we're doing a better job of policing in this city. And I believe that transformation is happening, but also working earlier and sooner with some of these cases to be able to not accumulate so much financial weight in order to settle these cases. But unfortunately, states' attorneys of the past were incredibly irresponsible and reckless and heinous. And the city of Chicago has to do its part to offer up reparations in this aspect to black men in particular who have overwhelmingly been targeted by wicked policing. It's why I'm grateful that we've had 8 years of our state's attorney, Kim Foxx, exonerating dozens and dozens and dozens of cases. So that effort is ongoing. Gary, would you like to add anything else to that?
Good morning, Gary and Gatewood, Deputy Mayor of Community Safety. A lot of our work is, as the mayor has mentioned, is working to rebuild trust with police and communities. And this goes back to the choice and leadership that the mayor made, appointing Larry Snelling to lead the Chicago Police Department and having a more partnership approach to how we look at safety. Where in the past we have consistently asked police to do entirely too much, now you see different mechanisms of our work, looking for different ways to work together and building out their trust, and not only with police, but government across the board. It is our hope and our goal that in building that trust in those relationships, we get out of a place where you need to have those settlements, because then you can start having transparent conversations and we can stop some of the abuse and harm that we have seen historically that is not the direction of this administration or the Chicago Police Department. So that's the work that we're doing, and that's the work that we'll continue to do.
Easing on down the road to...
That's what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking
about.
And I think Quincy Jones, Chicago native Quincy Jones was involved.
Nice,
okay.
Great. Just see why we have an honors history class. That's all I'm asking you all. Good job, Paris.
So, Mayor, the incoming president has vowed to deputize quote-unquote military assets to carry out his mass deportation plans. As mayor, if the president somehow deputizes military or National Guard on the streets of Chicago to assist in deportation raids, what do you do?
Well, first of all, that would be just a horrific measure to take. It would be. And I hope that the president-elect reconsiders that approach. There's no disagreement in this country that we need comprehensive immigration reform. We need real policy. That's what our focus should be on. We can do that, right? We can do that now, in fact, right? It's not too late. So I know President Joe Biden has worked with the Senate. He's attempted to work with the House of Representatives to actually pass something of substance to provide border patrol, stronger border patrol, support at the border, to hire more judges so that we can see asylum cases in an expedited way. There's so many other measures that we can take as a country. One of the things that's important that the people of Chicago know, that we have partners at the state level, at the county level. We're all going to work together to not allow the president-elect to use such extreme measures to respond to this moment. Like, we have to understand that as a society of people, we have to just treat people better. And I'm not saying that it allows for just mismanagement. Certainly we're not doing that here. In fact, when the mission began, there was no plan. We have not had a single bus arrive in the city of Chicago since last December. Our population census is under 3,000. 50,000 people have come to this city without federal support.